What you're looking at are all of the symbols that are associated with ISON in its path to the sun and away from the sun. There are four of these symbols on the boards. The one on the upper left-hand corner represents its first appearance in our system. This is, and I'll explain how I got this number later, this is about 6 astronomical units away from the sun. If you'll notice, there's a flattened L-like object in front of it, which signals the arrival of something ahead of ISON in our system. We'll get to that, an explanation of that particular symbol, in the next video. If you look on the image in the lower left-hand quadrant, that's the image of ISON as it's leaving our system. Notice that that same object, the little flattened L-like object, is attached to it and is leaving at the same time as ISON is, again about 6 astronomical units away. This is good news because it says that Comet ISON leaves intact. So it survives its path around the sun and it leaves intact. The problem is the debris fields that it's going to lay down in those debris fields. I believe that the other little object, the little rectangular object that's kind of connected to the line of the comet, represents the size of that debris field. So if you follow this over to the upper right-hand quadrant, you'll notice that that little quadrangular pattern has tightened up some. And what we're looking at there is ISON as it approaches the sun, actually as it passes the sun. So from this we get two things. We get a date of November the 28th when it actually passes the east limb of the sun, and we get a distance. If you'll notice off to the left, there's two little dots. There's one that's slightly larger, one that's slightly smaller, and that, I believe, is the Earth Moon. And that matches with the corresponding symbol on the lower right-hand quadrant, which is the message symbol, which makes sense because it's a message that is connected to us. Going back to the upper right-hand quadrant, you'll notice that there are essentially 4 little dots right at the edge of what is the sun. This represents, I believe, the number of days that it's going to take ISON to go around and reappear again. Now, what's a little bit confusing is why the orientation is different. But if you imagine that the top board represents one plane and the bottom board represents another plane, and remember these were folded over on top of each other like a closed book, then if you imagine the symbol for ISON rotated 180 degrees through that plane, then you get the orientation as it's coming out. So if we move to the bottom lower right hand quadrant, you'll see the leading edge of ISON as it passes the western limb of the sun. Now what's important to note here is that essentially Comet ISON survives, at least according to the boards. From this point on, it passes on out. We get to the lower left-hand quadrant, and again it's kind of spread out a little bit, but it passes away and it doesn't hit us. That's the good news. The bad news is that the debris field will cross our path because the plane of the path into the sun and the plane of the path away from the sun are essentially on the same plane. So just in the same way that ISON went right by Mars on its way into the sun, it's going to go right by us on its way away from the sun, and that's the bad news.